Good morning. I'm Commissioner Dan Tupper from District 3. Commissioner Randall is a little under the weather day, so I'm going to facilitate the meeting. This is the special meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners. It's Thursday, January 30th, 2025, 10 a.m. JPUD will be offering both virtual and online meetings, as well as in-person meetings, unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand to speak. I'd ask everybody to make sure your phones are silenced at this point. I noticed mine was still on, so took care of that little bit of business. And at this point, I'm calling us to order, and I would ask for the roll of the commissioners to make sure we have a quorum. Dan Tupper, Commissioner District 3.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
And Jeff Randall, Commissioner District 1.
Okay, we have a full board today. Next item is the agenda review. Do we have anything that we need to adjust? I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Being moved and seconded, any further discussion? Seeing none, the agenda is accepted as presented. Item number 4 is the broadband and cybersecurity plans. 4.1, the Gardner aerial bid. Is that communications or general manager?
I'll take this one, and a lot of this, we'll put stuff together, and he's responsible, but I'll do some talking. Specifically in the Gardner aerial bid, the reason we're bringing this back to the board, originally we were having our crew was, if you remember back, we were just going to string pond B, and then we added a couple ponds. Right now, for us to finish this project in a timely fashion and move on to additional grants, we need some additional help building the fiber along the main line. If you look at the map up on the screen, what we're proposing is that the red line would be contracted out. That's mainly 288 fiber aerial. And then the blues, our crew would go in and finish up the blue areas. It's 144 fiber and less. Because of outage season where we are today, it's really hard for our crews to stick on a project and get in and get it done. Along Highway 101, where the red line follows, you need to get in and out. You have to have flaggers. There's a lot of reasons to bid this out to a contractor. So that's our recommendation to the board, that we contract out that piece and move forward. If there's any questions.
Any questions, commissioners? Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one. We talked at the last meeting about how this would still be reimbursed, even though we would be going out to bid for it, not doing it ourselves. So the question I have is, when we're doing it ourselves, are we charging that to the project and then reimbursing the time that our linemen are spending doing broadband? We're being reimbursed with grant money?
So what we've used our crews for in the past, we've talked about as like the matching side of things, because we have to have so much of a match. This, because it will be dollars straight out of our reserves, this will be reimbursed through the grant money.
Okay, and then we still have sufficient match though?
We by the end of the project, yes.
So I guess the question I'd have is will this complete the project, or is there more after this to do? And does this just complete the 104 section and the Gardner section?
This will, there may be some bits and pieces. We're starting to do some review of work done to make sure we've connected the customers we should have, or have a plan to connect them. This is the bulk of it. I'm not going to say, Dan, we didn't miss a little tap or something. on the project, but we will go back and finish those up, but it'd be very, very small outside of what this map.
And this is mainline and distribution. It's not actually to the home, or does this include actually to the home?
What we're talking about here is main line and distribution. The drops to the houses are separate.
Okay, and again, I've kind of lost track. I know we met the 60% threshold. Are there still people in this particular area that will fall under that 60% that, you know, basically get it for free, for lack of a better term? I don't know if there's a different term we use for that. How is that playing out? Just an update on how this plays into, you know, how we're deploying and who still was on the list to get it, you know, and all that sort of thing. Just a bit of an update on that part. Is this area part of this? Will people in this area be some of those people?
So we have moved past the take rate threshold. So any new customers that sign up have to pay the $750, but all of the majority of the folks are still met that eligibility early on or just waiting to be connected. But we get additional signups all the time.
Okay. And then one last question is, where does this put us in the overall grant and how much we've spent? Is there still more left in the grant, or does this basically use up the last of the grant monies? I mean, where are we at in that, as far as the project coming to termination or completion, I should say? Where does this put us? Is there still more money to be had in the grant, or is this going to be the end of our grant money?
You know, we still have, I think when I did the last tally, we paid a couple invoices. So we have between just over 6 million left.
Oh, okay.
So move to.
But I still have one more question, Ken, if you could hold up. We have one from the audience.
Oh, okay. Didn't see you.
So we'll use the word take, or the take rate, right? So now, does those actually committed to service? Because you can't really say take rate. You can say they're potentially gonna get serviced, but there's a lot of people that I know service, you guys have spent the money to run service too, but they've not taken service, or they're not committed to service. So are you taking those funds to those people that have not, that actually don't end up taking service, and reallocated those to get people service that?
No, the funding is for getting the service getting the fiber to the home. That's what the $750 charge is. So there may be a few out there, and we'll have to do a review, that did not ultimately take the service, but that's not the requirement. The requirement is the construction, the take rate threshold was getting the service to the home, not necessarily taking the monthly service. There isn't a requirement for that. So we can do a report on who hasn't taken the service. The terms of meeting the terms of the grant is to provide access. The grants pay for the access. Obviously, it's in everybody's interest that we get people connected to monthly service, but that's not the requirement for the construction part of it.
So then there's potentially people that you've spent thousands of dollars to get service to their homes that will never actually potentially take service.
I would doubt never, but they may not be wanting the service in the short term. That could be the case, yeah.
But there was an initial indication that they were interested.
They signed up to have the
Okay,
fiber constructed
okay,
to the home.
okay.
No commitment.
Yeah, we didn't require a commitment.
So is that it? All right. Any other questions before we move forward? In the back, Rod?
How many services does that provide? How many residences does that serve potentially?
Passings.
So the passings is 2,000.
Okay.
I think we're at 1,400 signups so far. I haven't pulled that report in the last couple of weeks.
So potentially a lot of income.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Anything further? Thank you.
I want to move that we authorize the general manager to publish an invitation to bid for the Gardner fiber aerial construction project, bid number 25BB0801.
I second the motion.
So the motion's been moved and seconded to approve the general manager to publish an invitation to bid for the Gardner Fiber Aerial Construction Project, bid number 25BB081 or 01. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous. It passes. On to 4.2, the BEAD resolution.
Just one more thing,
Oh.
Dan. Commissioner Collins, we'll be sending you a DocuSign of the agenda report so that you can sign it so we can publish the bid today.
Okay, fine. I'll look,
Okay. It'll
keep
come
my
it'll come
eye
around
out
noon.
for it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we will move on to 4.2, the BEAD resolution.
Okay, so I'm gonna share a PowerPoint of our BEAD plan.
I guess while he's looking for that, Kevin, could you remind us again how much we're going after with this grant?
Right at 14 million. Did it stay below 14?
We lowered it this morning.
Okay.
That map, that map looks like how I feel.
Yeah. Okay. As you're probably all aware by now, but we'll just go over it really quick. The BEAD is funded by the NTIA. It's administered by the WSBO. The Washington State was allocated $1.2 billion in funding. It's a 3-year construction window from the time of award. The application is due tomorrow. They have a very aggressive response time for when we're supposed to hear back and when the funding is supposed to be distributed, but we're not, given how it's gone in the past, we don't anticipate contracts till 2026 sometime. There's a low-cost service requirement. We'll talk about that a little bit. They have very strong affordability focus. And their goal of the BEAD funding is to connect all unserved and underserved in Washington State. Their plan is that this is supposed to connect everybody. It's going to be an interesting process because there's a first round of funding. If they don't get applications for all of the areas, there'll be a second round of funding. And then there's going to be negotiations for award winners. There could be, well, we can get into that, where if they don't let, if your project is too expensive, they may ask you to bring the price down. So the whole process has been interesting. We haven't had a grant like this. And given all the federal funding drama that's gone on in the last week, it's been curious to see how things will shake out. All signs are things moving forward. The grant's still due tomorrow. We'll be submitting an application. So go back to the other computer to press the next button. These are the areas on the peninsula. For Eastern Jefferson County, there's only one area, that's project area 151. It goes down from the county line with Mason all the way up to Port Townsend and over to our county line with Clallam. There's also an area out on the west end, but we're not applying for that funding. So we're just project area 151.
Is anyone applying for funding for the West End?
So the Ho tribe, I think, has already received funding, so they're pulling that from the award area. Okay.
And so do we have an idea now as to where all this would impact, what communities or parts of the community, just in general? I mean, it's going to be all over, correct? It's not one contiguous.
It's all over,
it's
and I'll
all
show
over,
you the
right?
map in just a
Oh, okay.
moment. So yeah, so we have a 1,045 passings or what they're calling broadband serviceable locations. Those are the and underserved areas. We're putting in 70% take rate estimate. So that puts us at, 736 subscribers or connections is what we've been calling them. We're planning on serving just our as we've done so far, we're just doing our our electric service territory, which is everywhere north of Mount Walker. And we're asking for a memorandum of understanding with Hood Canal Communications to serve customers south of Mount Walker. They've already built out to that area for their current NTIA grant in partnership with Mason One. So they have about 15 locations left that they would use. So we would be the grantee from WSBO, and they would be our sub-grantee to connect that area, because the applicant has to apply for the entire project area. So this would connect all of our last and leftover, what we were calling leftovers from the current funded projects. And I'll show you the map in just a moment. Here's the project budget. It's a total of 13.35 million. Our ask is right about 13 million, and then Hood Canal is at just about 400,000. And this is the extended breakdown. We have about, I can't remember how many, I can't do the math right now. I think it's 130 some miles of fiber between mainline and buried fiber.
I'll leave it up to Will to take questions.
I was just wondering, so what does that work out to cost per house passed?
For the total project, it's about 12,000 per house passed, which is going to be above the state's targeted goal for cost of passing. We're in a high cost area no matter what. So we expect they're going to want to negotiate with us. Okay. So this is, we're just, the maps that I have today, I don't have the live map with me. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll try to explain it to you. This is the northern end of the county. The blue dots, the little tiny blue dots, those are the broadband serviceable locations. Those are all the areas that we can hit. This has got kind of the entire network map. The blue lines are the new lines of fiber that would be built to hit those areas. Go ahead.
Commissioner Randall has a question.
Actually, go ahead, because my question related to something Will said previously. So go ahead and finish this.
Okay. Yep. And then the red octagons are our powered cabinets, where we have our electronics, and the green ones are the splitter cabinets. Red lines are existing fiber already, and then those kind of pinkish polygons are the areas where the BSLs are located within. Move down south through the county, we've got clusters just north and a little bit south of the Hood Canal Bridge. We've got some just outside of Port Ludlow. You can see there's just a couple of areas left over from the current projects that are still unserved. And then, you know, down in the South County, just past, what is that called? Not Thorndike. What, you used to live there. What's it called? Bridgehaven, just south of Bridgehaven. There's some clusters over there. And then you'll see the clusters in Mason One's electric service territory, just the little dots all over the place. So these, unlike in the past, the NTIA determined the locations. So they set all of the broadband serviceable locations, and we have to come up with them. And you can see another cluster in the Hood Canal area. Okay. So this is the, you know, you guys have seen this chart many times before. This is all of our projects. We just added bead onto the end there. We're anticipating with the 2026 award and 3-year construction that the construction end date, not for our plans, but for the grant compliance, is going to be around 2029. Residential passings of 1,045. We went through those numbers. The state is still offering the 25% match for government agencies, so we're going to ask for that match. So the total project, 13.5 million. If we were to receive that, that would bring our total funding almost to 70 million. Since we've started this with 57 or 58 million in grant funding.
If you're awarded the BEAD and you're unable to complete construction on that schedule, and assuming they don't give an extension, what would happen?
Oh, we would not be able to use all the money,
Okay.
and we would have a
And
black
is
eye.
BEAD different than the others in that respect? I mean, are they all kind of operate or fall the same way? That if you don't complete, you either don't get the money or you won't get reimbursed?
You
I
just
mean,
don't get to finish your project.
Okay.
And then you have lower standing when you apply for the next round of funding.
Okay.
But in most cases, Dan, it's incumbent upon the agency needs your success as much as you need to be successful, and they work with you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure the public knows the process here, because we're right here, right? I realize 2029 seems like a long ways away. We still have this and this and this and this that have to be done. And I'm just concerned that we're not taking on, unduly. I realize we like to go after money. I get that. I'm not opposed to any of that. But are we really thinking about, are we going to be able to comply with everything in sequence because I know we've been behind on the current one. And maybe get extensions. Like you said, they want to work with us. They want to help you. I get all that. But I'm also have to look at the worst case scenario. We're already investing a lot of time and money into these, and now you've invested a lot of time, money, and effort and resources into this one. I just want to make sure that we're keeping sight of what we can do and what we cannot do in reality.
So as part of this, and the commissioners will receive something either later today or tomorrow, where we have some, we're gonna start focusing on our start dates, and then we'll bring in the end dates. So we have mapped out start times, end times for all the grants, not only for when we have to end for construction, but how our monies play out, how we can work through these with minimal additional financing and all of those kind of things. And so the bigger plan does take in everything into consideration that you're talking about. Not only can we get it done construction wise.
So it's going to have milestones and benchmarks, and then those are places, inflection points where we can say we need to change or we need to do something.
Step
back or step
here.
ahead.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for that information. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So my question related to when Will said if our price is above what NTIA wants to pay, we go into a negotiation process. And I'm wondering if you could talk more about what you know about that. Would they be shrinking the area to lower the total cost? Would they be asking us to come up with more of a match? What does that mean in your awareness?
It means all of the above. So it's going to be dependent on how much money is spent in other areas. So, and it also is, they may recommend for the highest cost drops to have that connected by what they're calling LEOs, which is low Earth orbit satellite service. So it's going to be kind of all options on the table. They may only want to pay for mainline and drops and not want to pay for electronics. They may want to have all different ways. But we're in a difficult situation because the satellite solution works for some people in our county, but there's a lot of trees, so it's going to be a tough one. And we've got trees and hills and shoreline, and our costs are just going to be high. There's no way around it.
Well, I appreciate that we've put the bid together, because I know other public agencies just have looked at similar situations and just chosen not to. So I realize the amount of work that it took to get us to this point.
Will, could you go back, please, a couple of slides to where you showed Marrowstone Island?
Yep. So that's Flagler Road. So Flagler Road is omitted from the Jefferson North area. So all of those homes along Flagler Road are now eligible.
That was my question.
Yep.
Leo,
So you asked about worst case scenario, and so I just wanted to say that a lot of the smaller ISPs, reason why they don't take grants is, and I don't know exactly how this particular grant is set up, but if you don't meet your commitments or if you fail your audits, they could potentially take all of your grant money back. So even though you built, they could say, we want it all back. And the first round of funding, back with BTOP, there were like 23 ISPs that actually went bankrupt because they actually said, okay, your penalty, they can penalize you up to 3 times the amount of your grant money. So if you got a $10 million grant and you fail your audit or you don't meet your commitments, they could potentially say you owe us $30 million back.
is that it, Leo? Thank you. Yeah, and I think that legal counsel will have a lot to say with how the contracts will be written, and that's something we'll be made aware of, I would imagine, at some point in time.
Have some comment for legal counsel when we get in a little further into some resolutions. So, yes.
Any other questions? Somebody else had a hand there. Mr. Tiersch. We're waiting for you, Tom. Still nothing. You're still muted.
Get that?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, technical difficulties. Looking at the map that's currently up there, not clear if, to me, does that include the Jefferson North area or not? Because I noticed on the chart that showed the various completion estimates that Jefferson North, which was originally estimated to be completed this year, is now out to the middle of next year. Could you clarify that, please? Thank you.
So Jefferson North, yeah, and I don't think I updated all of the timelines. Jefferson North will not be completed until summer of next year. We're pushing that project back, and we'll have that whole chart in the next board meeting on Tuesday.
The projected start date now for Jefferson North is what?
I think September. We'll have to.
That's part of the information will come out to
Yeah.
the board in the next, hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was gonna do it this morning and didn't have. I needed to.
We've been up to our knees in bead, so, or elbows or neck, all of the above. Okay, so go back here. So this is the construction timeline for BEAD. We begin engineering work in 2026 after the contract, field work, staking, and construction work would start in 2026. In the mainline construction would end 2027. We'd be doing drops and installs through the end of the year to 2028.
So again, on the assumption that you were awarded and looking at this date, how much pre-purchasing would need to be done? Or do we expect we would have inventory that we wouldn't be out ahead of things before starting that grant?
We won't be purchasing anything before the contract is finalized, but we will have to purchase materials before construction begin. We'll cover that with the timeline discussion.
Yeah, I know it's a long ways out and a bunch of ifs, but I just want to make sure that that's something that's on the radar, is that the board is way ahead of time informed about what kind of involvement we're going to have financially or fiscally into getting this particular grant moving.
Yeah, going forward, we're purchasing the materials much closer to the start of construction. Our initial purchase of materials was to make way for that beginning NTIA grant that we're building now, where we were told from the beginning that it had to be completed by the end of 2022. So we did a lot of prep work and had to do a lot of waiting. So we anticipate more waiting going forward.
Thank you.
And that's all I have for our BEAD project. And
I do have another general question about this as well, and that is obviously, and I was a little surprised to see the last minute addition of the MOU, which we'll talk about later. That was the first on our radar, and in less than 48 hours before we're looking at this, I was a little concerned about the timing and why we weren't made aware of that earlier in the process. And so my second part of this question is, first is why so late on the MOU thing? That's something seems to me we should have known about a long time ago. Are there any other partners going to be involved once, if awarded and we do start the project? Are we going to be involved with other ISPs in the form of working with us on the build out? I mean, is it strictly going to, are we going to need other partners in this, or is it strictly going to be JPUD? I realize HCC, Hood Canal Communications, will have their own, project going, but just, what other involvement could we conceivably be looking at that point if we were to start this project?
We will have subcontractors the same way we've done with the current projects, where we have the engineering contract, we have the main construction project, or construction contractors. This is unique because we had to service that entire area, and we don't have infrastructure down there and have not wanted to expand infrastructure down there. So I apologize about the lack of alert on that one. That was entirely my fault. But we needed that partnership to be able to serve the entire area.
So again, not fully understanding the bead in general of how this is all going to play out. Maybe there's still stuff that needs to be worked out at upper echelons that when this comes out but are there incumbents that we're going to come up against in these areas that we're at odds with, or we're going to work with? I mean, are there no incumbents? Are we the only ones operating there? I know you talked about the low Earth satellite stuff maybe as part of this. So I'm just curious as to what frictions or roadblocks we could run into with incumbents.
So the application is open for anyone to apply for. So if any other ISP wants to apply to serve the area, they could be submitting. I haven't heard of any. It could happen. And then we would be in competition with them. And it could be that in order to produce the targeted budget that NTIA and the state have, that they ask us to work together or trade things. That's all a realm of possibilities. I don't anticipate any of that, but this is if the way that the application works, you apply for the whole area, you get the whole area. So there isn't any friction with other providers in that way. These are for unserved and underserved locations.
I'm going to be positive and assume that you're going to be awarded this grant. So I'm just trying to set the stage now for things that you should be thinking about, especially for the boards it's going to be under our purview, that we're ahead of the curve on being informed about who's involved, what's involved, and what the process is going to be as you find out, not after.
Yeah. And we still have to get to the award state, and then we have to get to the contract after the award. So there are multiple checkpoints. There are multiple opportunities to review the larger picture and to get off the train if that is the desire of the board.
So I will point this out to the board. I had some lengthy conversation with Joel Paisner, legal counsel, yesterday. In what you guys are approving today, there are outs. It says in there that we can, if we don't come to agreement between us and the state for any reason, we can just pull out. So there are going to be additional areas where the board can say, because this crept in or these things change, because we have changed this a lot. I apologize, but trying to get everything put together has been a Herculean task for Will. But there are places that we can jump away and not be held responsible.
So are you talking about as a totality, or are you talking about individual locations?
We're talking totality. We can, let's say we can't come to agreement because of they're not willing to fund the costs, or if there's a new wrinkle that says we have to do X and we would have to bore those costs. So we can pull out from the agreement once we've been awarded, but before we sign the contract, there are things for the PUD's commissioners to have additional review.
And again, because of the retirement of the general manager, it's kind of why I'm bringing this up today, because this is something we'll have to revisit, obviously, several times in the future. I want staff to be aware from one commissioner, maybe the commission agrees in totality, that I think we need a process set up to where we are being informed ahead of time, so that we can avoid these 12th, 11th and 12th hour, here it is, sign it type of situations. Now I realize we have outs, but there's going to come points when that may not be the case, that we have to sign this to get out when we've missed the deadlines because we weren't prepared. I don't want us to run into that situation. I want us to have plenty of foreknowledge of our options and our challenges before it's laid in front of us to sign something. So.
Understood. And,
Yeah.
and we will try to endeavor to do that. These applications are difficult and many things often come down.
Yeah,
to-
again, I appreciate staff's work and the general manager on this. I realize this one's a different breed. I mean, I've talked to several people just in the last few days at a conference, and we talked a little bit about BEAD, and almost to the utility, they opted not to do it because of, is it NIT or the qualification?
We're going to talk about that
Yeah,
too.
about a myriad of things. And again, I applaud our, progressive look forward and the work we're putting into this, but I think at some point we have to really be looking at, do we have the manpower, the resources to execute these things? Because if we don't, then you've wasted, wasted may not be the proper term, but you've expended a lot of time, money, and energy for something that we're not going to be able to proceed with. So that's a situation I hope we can avoid. And I realize there's a lot of crystal ball involved in that. So.
Yeah. And I just wanted to make it clear from when we had that chart that was up there that showed all the grant areas. This first project for the Quilcene and Gardner is 3 of those columns. So that it's a $22 million project. It's a very big project. So it has taken a while. It has taken a lot of effort, but it is, almost the first third of what we're doing. So it's a big one. So the resolution. Are there questions about the resolution? I can bring it up.
Go ahead.
So that area on Flagler Road, right? So right now it's designated as pay the $750.
Yep.
So if you guys end up getting grant money, does that $750 obligation go away?
We can take, that's a discussion we still have to have internally, how we're going to handle that. Because we can either take it out of the project area and call it served, or we can take it off of the adjacent area. But we have not had the time to review that part of of our process.
Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. I think it would be helpful for residents on Marrowstone Island who have signed up to be informed that the timeline has slipped.
Well, we need to have that discussion internally, and we'll bring it back to the board, because I know that many of those folks would rather pay the money than wait 3 more years. Some of them may want to just wait, but some of them may want to pay. And so we will have to decide how we want to
I'm
handle
not
that.
talking about the BEAD. I'm talking about Jefferson North.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. In the adjacent area along Flagler Road, we have a number of folks who have signed up to pay $750 to be connected with the first opportunity. So we'll have to discuss.
Talking about 2 different things.
Well, I'm confused then, Ken.
I'm talking about people who are grant eligible under Jefferson North, who had the expectation that work would start sooner and finish sooner. And I think good communication requires us to let them know that the timelines have changed.
That you are correct. We have not finished our internal review of the schedule, and we want to discuss it with the commissioners. And when that's finalized, then we will communicate to the public. So-
Mr. Boyd, I'm going to give you about 2 more minutes. It took a minute. I'll give you 2 more.
I was just curious. Now I'm confused because in Flagler, if they're paying $750 to get hooked up, then Flagler Road's served.
No, Flagler Road is not served per the applications, and we have not started the construction. It's an internal discussion we have to have.
Anything further?
We will
Commissioner?
have it.
Okay, so I do have one question. Mr. Boyd brought up the issue, and this is something I've talked about in the past, and I'm still somewhat curious or concerned about, and that's the $750 number that we're utilizing. I've never, honestly, and really, I don't believe, seen any backing to where that number, the nexus for that number, and if it's accurate, and if it's fair and equitable to everyone in the beat or within the grant areas. So are we going to address that number, that $750 number anytime soon? Because I, as a board member, I'd like to know when people ask me, well, what's this 750? I don't have an answer for them. So if you
want to,
guys
yeah.
can give me an
It's-
idea of where we're headed with that number and how we got to that number, I think that also would be helpful for future planning and messaging to the community.
So the number came about by very rough averages. Some people, if they have a very long driveway, hard to get to the house, it costs more than 750. But there's a lot along these routes that are very close to the road, quite easily get plowed in, so they're less than the 750. It is similar to what we do on the electrical side. We come up with a price and charge per service. We don't say if you're 300 feet away or 200 feet away, it's a flat fee, and that's how we put our electrical program together. Same thing with the fiber. It's a flat fee for a drop from the road to the house. As we gain more information, do more work, we will come back to the board similar to we do with the electrical plan and say, hey, it's costing us more to do this work now. We need to increase this fee. So we're comfortable with the 750 based on some very rough averages on the first one. But 2 years from now, Dan, when we have the information, we will come back and say, no, our average needs to be X dollars. So that's where the 750 came from, a
And-
starting point.
And thanks for the explanation, but again, we're going to have a change in leadership, in the organization. So I think even to help, the new people coming on board, it would help to have a primer explaining what you just said and a few sideboards or guidelines stating what you said as we will reevaluate on a certain schedule, right? I realize it may be subject to construction, may be the answer to that. But I think it would help to start for messaging purposes to the community so that it can alleviate staff time as well as commissioner time of having to explain this over and over or getting it wrong in the way we explain it individually, to have something in place that we can point to that on the website or whatever it may be, or when we send out information to Maristone or wherever it may be, that's part of the information that's going out there. That would be an ask I would make, unless the other commissioners think that's an unrealistic ask.
And Dan, that rate, that is in our broadband service rates, and it has caveats of 500 feet. If you have additional, we may charge extra. If we have to drill or cut concrete, you might have to pay extra. So that's already taken care of in our rates.
So if it's in the rates, it would still be helpful, I think, to put it as, something on the website or however we want to do it, to condense that or make it more prominently understood and seen, because a lot of people may not read it. They're just going to sign it. I don't know. So if everybody's actually looking at that rate schedule or wherever that information is
We're
showing
looking
up.
at the rate schedule that way, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Any further questions before you go on, Will? Anybody?
Yeah.
Oh, Commissioner.
What's your expectation as to how long the grant application review process is going to take?
I don't expect that we will have a final answer until the fall.
Okay.
Or an answer. So what was communicated yesterday at the last meeting of the state broadband office was they have a very aggressive timeline for their first responses, in the order of 2 months or so. I don't anticipate them to meet that. If they do, they're only giving out tentative awards. Everything has to be approved by NTIA before we can announce it to the public. So even if we have a tentative award, one, will probably be in negotiations for a while, and two, we will not be able to do any sort of announcement for months afterwards.
Okay.
Anything further? No further questions? Okay, are you ready for the resolution on our
Yeah,
part?
did the
or-
commissioners want me to bring that up on the screen or what's the
So-
preference or?
I move board approval of a resolution approving submission of application for WSBO broadband project and attesting to the certifications required under the application.
I will second the motion.
Motion's been moved and seconded to approve a submission of application for the WSBO broadband project and attesting to the certifications required under the application. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous?
We will also need this DocuSign today and will be sent to you
Okay.
post haste.
So the commissioner should be aware we need to get the DocuSign completed today if it comes through electronically, obviously. All right, we will move on to item 4.3.
Before we go
Oh,
on,
okay.
This has been very hectic to get here, and I know it's been trying for the commissioners, but thank you for your patience and working with us getting this through. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that acknowledgement.
It is very much appreciated.
We will move on. Well, we're not done yet, so we got further
More
to,
to cover.
we're kind of doing this in reverse order really, but we'll do it the way the agenda was set. So we'll move on to 4.3, low cost broadband rate.
Okay, I will share my screen. So in early drafts of the BEAD funding, there was a higher scoring for more affordable and lower cost options for customers that meet the low income thresholds. As the rules went on, they changed the rules to make it mandatory to now have a low cost option for all customers who earn below 200% of the federal poverty level. And that rate that they want is $30 or less per month. We don't have a current rate that fits that. Our low income rate that we have at this time is $45 a month. And we had built that rate during when the ACP program existed, and we anticipated that customers that were eligible for that rate would be able to pay $15 a month in total, combining our low cost rate and the ACP discount. That ACP discount is gone. It's unlikely to come back.
And that was the $30 federal subsidy, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the state is being more aggressive in wanting all applicants to meet that that low cost rate. The rate has to be $30 or less, and it has to be greater than 100 by 20 megabits per second. We already have a 150 by 150 rate or a speed package. We don't see any reason to change that. That's our lowest amount. And so we would make that one eligible for that $30 cost. You'd have to meet the 200 FPL, which we would go through the same process of having your income verified by our CSRs. We would not put this rate into place though until 2027 in anticipation of the project starting.
So understanding that we have to provide a greater subsidy for low-income people, does it make sense now or to project in the future an increase in our rate for the people who don't qualify for low income?
I think we need to look at that in a systematic method, and given how involved rate discussions have been in the near past and the past, I'd rather have that discussion at a later date, but I think we need to take a look at it. To meet the requirements of the application, we need to approve a low cost rate, a qualifying low cost rate. today, and that's what I'm proposing.
And I understand that that's looking several years now down the road.
Yep.
So question I have is percentage of customers that are, that qualify under this. Is it 5%, 10%, 2%? Do we have somewhat of a rough figure as to how many people would qualify for this rate in, and this is in totality, this is for all of our grant areas, to be clear, correct?
This is for, well, this would be,
Or
yeah,
just,
once-
or is this just apply to bead or?
we could limit that, but I wouldn't recommend it. This would be for all of our service area and any broadband customer. And Gene would know better the total number of folks that are eligible, but we're going to be, right now, we're at 150% of federal poverty level. So this is a higher threshold than that, but we're going to be adjusting our thresholds internally in the coming months and years anyway.
Because I'm kind of playing off what Commissioner Collins just asked about, and that is for the business model purposes for cost recovery of costs and those sorts of things. For the business model, how's this going to impact all of the customers by doing this lower rate when we're not compelled to go this low, right? What I heard was that they were looking for 30 or less, or I thought I heard you say,
It has to be $30 or less, and we're putting it at 30. So that's the lowest.
okay.
But we could go lower if we want, but $30. So that's not a discount. $30 is the rate.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to point out, because of the delay in the start of this, that gives us time to better produce those business models. We'll have our people connected by that time, and we'll have a better feel for what it is gonna take to move forward. So that's the beauty of postponing it till that time frame.
Yeah, but I would disagree a little bit because we're in the middle of the rate study and this would take effect before that rate study would be over and we'd be looking at the next one. We might be looking at the next one, but we would still be into the next rate study for rates. I'm assuming broadband is going into our rate studies as well, is it not? Or are we doing that all in-house as far as determining broadband rates?
So FCS is looking at broadband rates, but right now it's at a very high level because we don't have the customers connected yet. So that's, again, they are looking at things. It's a very high level. Part of that will be discussed on the 4th, but again, the delay helps us in actually putting that business plan and looking at what everything has to be by that time frame.
Any other questions? Mr. Boyd?
At the last meeting, you said that when I questioned, well, how come your rate's $30 and we're only getting a $5 less wholesale rate, which is, obviously we can't serve anybody if we're paying $25 and you're only charging $30. And you said that at $30, you're actually losing money.
Yes.
So what is your cost? What is
You can go ahead, sure, if you want. I can all.
So.
Well, does Leo have any more to go with that? I want to try and get him.
I'm just gonna say, the reason this is delayed is so that we can have all of those dollars into FCS and to Doug Dawson to bring it to the board. We're still moving at a very rapid rate here, so.
You still got time, Leo, if you want it. So again, you can get with staff offline and discuss it further if need be, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if it's not sustainable, right? If you're saying $30 is not sustainable, who's paying for it?
The rest of the ratepayers are paying for it, and as Commissioner Collins
That
brought
was
up.
my question.
Yeah. And that is how it works on the electric side as well. It's subsidized by the rates paid by all of the
The
customers.
postage stamp rate.
Well, no, it's paid by so
It's the low income programs we're
it's,
required to
Yeah.
to have in place.
yeah, and per our initial business plans with Doug Dawson, it's a range of prices that go into it. But we set our initial price for the retail at 65 because that was just about at the break-even price, and then going above that for the cash flow over time.
You got about 30 seconds if you want. Okay, so
Wow, so then your electrical rate that for low income is actually less than what your costs are to provide the service?
We charge, yeah, we have additional charges to the rest of the ratepayers to cover that subsidy.
That's that postage stamp methodology, right? You're spreading the cost amongst all the. Okay.
More expensive than a postage stamp.
Well, I don't know. I haven't sent any mail letter.
They're
I haven't
going
sent
up
any letters
rapidly.
lately, so I
Going up
can't answer to that. I'll take your word for it. All right, so back to you, Will. Was there more?
No, that's it. And then it's just approving the resolution, because rates are done by resolution. And I can bring up the resolution if you'd like.
I don't have any further questions. Anyone, any last call for questions? Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, this is your chance. All right, seeing none, entertain a motion to take action on the resolution.
So I move that the Board of Commissioners, Jefferson County PUD, adopt a new low-cost rate for retail and wholesale broadband services.
I'll second the motion.
So the motion's been moved and seconded to approve the adoption of the resolution, adopting a new low-cost rate for retail and wholesale broadband services. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Motion is unanimously approved. Next item is 4.4, the MOU with Hood Canal Communications, if my agenda is correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
So this is the memorandum of understanding to enter into the, to add Hood Canal Communications as a sub-grantee of our BEAD award. This is the same MOU template they're using for their sub-grantee status with Mason 3 for Mason 3's BEAD application.
So could you go back on it? So they are working with Mason 3 on BEAD?
Yep.
Okay. I thought, I know they had Mason, I thought Mason 1 was listed in the MOU, but I didn't see anything about Mason 3.
Mason 1 is the electric service provider for this area that they would be the sub-grantee for. And there's only 15 broadband serviceable locations in that area. And a lot of their cost to get to them is going to be replacing poles.
Yeah, so I guess if we're going to jump right into it, that was one of the first questions I had was, I don't see anything here from Mason 1 supporting Hood Canal, which again, I hadn't, till 48 hours ago, I didn't even know that Hood Canal was even part of this process that we were doing. So that's my first question is Mason 1 up to speed, or do they need to be? Does HCC already have the authority and ability and a contract in place to do this work?
They do, yeah.
Okay.
And Mason 1 is up to speed. And I've asked Mason 1 for an additional letter of support for Hood Canal, and they're supposed to be delivering it before we submit.
That was my first question. I'll have more unless somebody else.
They have offered a letter of support for our application, but I wanted one that covered Hood Canal as part 2.
Anyone else? So I guess I'll keep asking on this one. Again, just trying to vet this because it's such short notice and we're going to be approving this. And again, and I imagine this falls within the purview of the general manager to do this on his own, or did this require board approval? Just curious.
The grant,
No, this doesn't this requires to be consistent with everything else. We're asking for the board to authorize the general manager.
Okay.
The grant itself does not explicitly require that the board approve it, but we're just trying to be consistent.
So following through on this, since the general manager seems to be in approval of this because it's on the docket for approval, my question is do we have, I know what part of this answer is probably going to be, well, we don't need everything yet. Do we have everything from HCC that is required of them to complete their part of this project if awarded? Or are we expecting to get more from them later on? Or do we have, we're obviously signing an MOU with them stating that they have all this information. Do we have that information from them?
We have all the information we need to apply for the grant. This is a non-binding agreement, and we have to enter into formal agreements after the award. So we have a number of steps still to take with them.
So, and I realized that this is going to be a moving process and, evolving or whatever the term may be.
Yep.
So that's my question is, as I read through the MOU, obviously there's a lot of legal language in the course of the MOU. My question is, if they default, for lack of a better term, there's probably a more likely term that should be used for that, that they're unable to uphold their part of it, we just give back that part of the funding we received? I mean, what,
No,
what,
we would-
or
we
will
would be
we
on-
be required to complete their part of it? And would we get their portion of the funding? I mean, how does this work if HCC isn't able to uphold their end of the deal? I know there's a lot of severability and, held
Yeah.
harmless and that sort of stuff, but I'm just curious of what our responsibility as Jefferson PUD will be if the whole project falls to us.
We're applying to serve the entire area of Project 150 or Project Area 151, which extends from the Mason County line all the way up to the Clallam County line. So we would be responsible for connecting all those. That doesn't exclude us from entering into new partnerships. It doesn't exclude us from having negotiations with the state broadband office that says we can't. They would be expanding existing fiber to connect these customers. For us, it would be building an entire new system. So there's no way we'd be more affordable. So it would, the interesting part about this grant is that there's still so much left up to discussion. We will be having those discussions going forward, and we will keep the board in
Yeah, and just to be clear, I have no passion or prejudice toward HCC. These are people who are in my district, truth be known, but we don't have electric service there, so it makes it harder, obviously, to operate and build a network down there if you're doing fiber.
Yep.
So I just want to be clear, if Jefferson PUD is the one who ultimately has to complete this work, I guess the questions that we'll get from those 15 customers, if HCC isn't able to uphold their part of it, and I have no reason to believe that they won't be able to, are we still going to be able to answer those people's need and question, and where will they get served? I mean, what is our opinion now? I realize that's another crystal ball question, but will we be able to do what you just said? We'd have to build our own network there for 15 customers.
But there are ways to do it. There are things we'd look at. If the what ifs come about, we would look at all of our options. I'm not sure what they are, really don't want to talk to them today, but there are things we can do. And these customers are in Jefferson County. And for us to do this grant, we need to hit these last 15. This is the most economical way we can do it. So if something would come up, we would come up with plans on how to serve it, but that's part of the grant requirement.
So I have a question.
Yeah, Jeff.
So when I presume Finley was doing the engineering for us on this, or preliminary engineering, or whatever you want to call it, did they come up with, here's how we propose to get to these 15 customers and here's what we think it'll cost?
No, but they had to review Hood Canal Communications designs and their network designs and approve it before we could submit.
Okay, so I guess then have we talked to Hood Canal? Have they come up with estimates for getting there? I mean, I'm kind of following up on Dan's questions. NTIA is saying there's 15 customers that need to be served there. Just to kind of get to Dan's point, do we have the confidence that we can have at this stage that we've done our due diligence? Hood Canal's done their due diligence. We think we can do this.
Yes, the numbers I submitted or I showed earlier were Hood Canal's budget numbers, and I have a long form version of that budget as well. We also have all of their network diagrams. They turned over all of their engineering information for Finley to review and put their stamp on before we can submit.
Well, I'll just say that, they're a private ISP. I presume that they feel like they can do the work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to us and willing to go into an MOU. If this seemed impossible, I don't see why they would be willing to do this. So I'm presuming we have good faith and we've come up with the best plan we can, and they're willing to help us achieve it.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'm just trying to vet this because it was a short notice thing on the agenda. And I realize this is one more component. If we want to be successful, we have to approve it today. So I just want to make sure we vetted this well and that we've put it out there that, everyone has asked the right questions to dot the i's and cross the t's. Commissioner Collins, go ahead.
So that being said, I move that the Board of Commissioners approve a memo of understanding between Jefferson and Hood Canal Communications regarding Area 151.
I will second the motion.
Motion's been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask for discussion because I am not completed with my vetting of the MOU. So I have a couple more questions, and that is in regard to the matching fund requirements that were in this. There was quite a bit of language about HCCs, what they would pay and not pay and come up with. I'd like to have that explained as to what exactly that means.
So it's been another area of confusion that's gone back and forth. The BEAD grant requires a 25% match. At the outset of the process, the state committed the match. The match at one point from the state was withdrawn, which would have left us to come up with a 25% match. We were not sure we would pursue the grant with a 25% match. But 2 days after it was withdrawn, it was placed back onto the table, but only for public agencies. As we are the public agency applying for the area, we would be eligible for that match. If something happens in the future, if the governor's budget in the future is unable to cover that match, which is a possibility, and there's a smaller match given, then Hood Canal would get proportionally smaller match, and they would be required to come up with the cash to meet the rest of the grant requirements, as would we.
And so there'll be language in whatever contract we finally settle on with HCC to that effect. I just want making sure that we are looking at this eyes wide open of what the costs could be to HCC in particular, since they are a private working in conjunction with the public here on this funding. So
yeah, and so they have their own, and they're building out the Brennan area mostly with NTIA funding. They're familiar with the grant requirements. They're as concerned about this as we are.
question in the back.
Is the cost estimate for this,
For which part of it?
or the work that you've just been describing?
For Hood Canal, their estimate is 390,000. And most of that, as I said, is pole replacements, because the poles in that area, they had, for their current project, they needed $2.5 million additional of pole replacements to be able to construct the fiber. The state of the poles in the Brennan area is not fantastic.
So in a follow-up to that question, and again, on the assumption that, we're awarded and contracts are signed and the work gets done, but we end up doing the work there, do we have an estimate ourselves if we were to do the work there, what that number would be? But it would come out of our BEAD funds rather.
Well, it comes out of the BEAD
award,
funding
right?
no matter what. So, and the state may not want to pay for the make ready, and we'd have to have that discussion. So there's a lot to be decided, but we would have to look at specific things. And there's lots of options. As Kevin said, we could pursue some direct partnerships with Mason One. We could ask that it go to satellite. There's many ways it could go.
Because again, I'm looking at the customers there having an assumption that, or presumption that they're going to get this service, and if things go wrong and we are left in that position, I want to be able to tell them, or be ready to tell them, here's plan B.
So one thing these are my feelings, not necessarily how things are gonna go. In the negotiation, because our costs are so high, areas like this have the potential to be left out. Because you have 15 customers in very rough numbers, $400,000 to hit these 15 customers. These are the areas that the state's got to look at real hard to say, it doesn't make sense. You have to do something else. So I'm not sure if how things look today, if this area will be funded in the way we're talking about. This is the best thing the PUD can do today to cover those customers.
Right. And I'm concerned about the messaging once we get to that point that HCC will be doing, and that we are definitely, that they understand we're partners in this, and that everything they do will be going in conjunction with us, that we'll see it before they do it. Because I
Yeah.
think, because
Yeah.
that's, you know, we want to make sure that nobody gets misled or misunderstands anything. So that's the reason I'm going down this road, because these people are in my district, you know, and we have a water footprint down there, but that's all. So, you know, this could put us into another, you know, can of worms, you know, that's going to take staff time, maybe legal costs and that sort of thing that I want to avoid now by bringing it up, rather than having it, you know, slap us in the face down the road. So that's something that's on people's minds now, in the public and in the organization. So one last question, and then we'll move on, and that is to the match. Best guesses or more information of what's going to happen with the state matching funds. Is it, are we not as sure as we were 2 months or 2 weeks ago that money would be forthcoming? I realize there's a lot going on in the country, a lot going on at the state level with the new governor and legislature, and obviously things, you know, back east. How confident are we on the match? Because this is another concern for me. If we have to put up a 25% match, I'm probably a no vote on this.
We're
Most
aware,
definitely.
we're aware that the commission may not support a 25% match. As I said, staff didn't know if we would bring it forward with that amount of match. We have no confidence, and all the confidence we can have. It's been placed in the governor's budget. The state has committed the funding. That's the best we can do. But this is a moving target. There'll be lots more negotiations, and we'll have lots to bring back.
Again, I just wanted to put it on the radar that is one of those milestones or that benchmarks I'm watching, is if that matching goes away, it pretty much kills this for me. So,
Yeah, and there may be a partial match. We just don't know.
yeah. Okay, any further discussion? So it's been moved and seconded to approve a motion authorizing the general manager to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Hood Canal Communications regarding the application of BEAD funding. All those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous. MOU is approved. Next item is the cybersecurity plan, 4.5 on the agenda.
Share my screen.
And I'm gonna start here, if that's okay, as Will's getting some things ready to go. The cybersecurity plan is needed for the BEAD grant. And that's why we're pushing it so quickly today. Regardless of BEAD funding, the BEAD grant, the PUD has to have this cybersecurity plan moving forward. We as a utility can afford to be second best in cybersecurity. So this discussion that we're having and the plan that is going to take us a minimum of 18 months to implement and put together has to be completed regardless of moving forward with BEAD or this BEAD grant. The grant is forcing us to bring it to the board very early, but this has to be done. So with that.
So, and just so it's clear to the public, the actual plan is not something we can share publicly. It has been submitted to the board for review. It covers a number of sensitive topics for our organization. What I'm going to give a report on is kind of the broader scope of the plan. That's what we'll discuss today. I will not be able to take questions on individual sections of the plan. That is the preface. Okay, so the proposed cybersecurity plan, the overall is a large spreadsheet that inventories and reviews existing cybersecurity threats, capacities, and what our target priorities are going forward. It uses the NIST 2.0 cybersecurity framework that is required by the NTIA for the plan that we submit to them. And yeah, that's the second point. And it applies to all of the utility and not just broadband. And that was an important part. So that's part of what makes it such a large task. It's been a huge lift in the last couple weeks, but we put it together. And most of what it's shown is that we have a lot of work to do. The two-part analysis, current policies, processes, procedures, and then the target where we want to be. And then it ranked each of those by low, moderate, or high priority level. Curtis Fryer, our technology and infrastructure manager, and Chris Lott, our IT manager, put together the plan. And a lot of it was informed by our Energy Northwest audit that we had a few months ago. That was an excellent primer to be able to complete the plan in a timely fashion. As I said, there's still a lot of work to do. This is the framework for the NIST legend. These are all the areas that are outlined and how the template is put together. Govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. That is how the plan goes through and how we assess each area. And it's got a little bit more explanation. So the current areas that we have policies covering cybersecurity, we have a risk management policy that addresses some cybersecurity aspects, our data privacy policy, we have our internet service policies for the broadband side, our procurement policy, and then our HR policy has use of technology and acceptable uses. Those are just a start. Filling out the NIST framework, we have a lot more policies that we need to develop and a lot more shoring up of our programs. The three main policies that we identified that we're going to be bringing back to the board in the coming months are an incident response plan, a security plan, and a supply chain management plan. We have copies of similar plans from other regional PUDs. We were hoping to kind of adapt them quickly, but we realized in the process that we need to take our time with this and do it right. And we also need to be able to identify the specific roles and staff members that are going to carry out these plans, and that will take some time.
So you're focusing on cybersecurity, but this is covering supply chain as well. Wasn't there a second part to this besides cyber?
The supply chain is very much part of the cybersecurity because it involves where we're procuring all of the devices that we use for our IT infrastructure and making sure that those vendors, manufacturers have all been vetted and are meeting all the requirements that are involved. We have all kinds of rules for our existing vendors. We have compliance rules that we have to meet to comply with our federal awards, but this takes it a step farther and involves a degree of vetting that we don't have the capacity to do at this time, and that we need to either contract with companies that do or build it up in-house, and likely some combination of both. Cybersecurity training and culture. So one of the things that the plan emphasizes is that we need to make sure that cybersecurity awareness is embedded throughout our organization, and we need to take a number of steps to make sure that happens. One of the steps we'll be taking is doing a SWOT analysis of our current capacity.
Acronym?
Strategic. Oh, now I'm blanking on it. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and come on, somebody else knows this.
I remember Dr.
Technologies? I don't know.
No, I can't remember. I'll get it for you in a second.
Okay.
Any other day and I'd be able to answer it, but I've got too much in my head. Threats.
Yes.
Threats. There you go.
Thank you,
Yes,
Jennifer.
thank you.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you for the team effort on that.
So the plan and the framework is very clear that they want cybersecurity into the mission vision of the organization. So we want to add it into our objectives of our strategic plan when we do that review in the coming months. We talk about security and safety, but being specific about cybersecurity and safety, and then having some metrics and work plans to support that. And we have a little bit in our onboarding program, but we need to strengthen that for new employees and for new commissioners coming in, especially with devices coming through. Adding cybersecurity to safety meetings, there's a little bit of that, but again, increasing that so that everybody is on board with same objectives. Facilities security upgrades that we need to make. I think we've discussed this with the commission before, and we're working on a number of those, but we need to make sure they get completed and are compliant. Vendor and contractor training. We have vendors and contractors that use some of our technology or some of our devices from time to time. We need to make sure that all of the security steps are taken and that they're understood by those vendors when they use our technologies. And then just regular leadership and staff updates and building this into the culture. So staffing and support programs. Right now, we are adding an additional FTE to our IT program. We're adding a higher level systems administrator that will be responsible for all of the servers and for additional security tasks. We were going to add that position regardless. We're going to anticipate that we'll need 1 to 2 additional members over time. The amount of additional members will depend on our use of contractors and use of additional support. So there's a number of different ways that we can solve these problems, but that will be what we'll be bringing back to the board in the coming months. Some of the services that we've identified, we will likely contract for. Security Operations Center. It might be as simple as an expansion of our multi-factor tool ESET that we use. There's different opportunities for that. Security information event management, so we are able to log security threats and be able to review when be able to have a platform to review more incidents of intrusion attempts and how we deal with that. And then the Network Operations Center or software platforms that allow us to do incident response and then allow us to respond after hours. So there will be a number of areas that we'll be looking at and bringing back to the board in our reporting. So right now, I just wanted to share this slide. This is kind of our 3 major areas that we have, not just the focus of IT, but that we have to cover for cybersecurity. We've got our corporate network, that's mostly our facilities and our employees' devices and all the software programs that they're using to do their day-to-day job. We have our broadband network that our customers use to access the internet. And then we have the SCADA network, which is all of the fiber and other technology devices that connect and help support and report on our operations. And these are our staff members that are responsible for those 3 areas currently. You can see we're adding an additional one. And so all 3 of these are interlocking and they all have to work together. And it's our goal in the next year to really try to build these teams as partnerships to make sure we're as secure as we can be.
So I go back that slide. This slide's going to change a little bit. SCADA needs to be barely touching corporate, and we will use the same infrastructure as broadband, but for the SCADA side of things, it has to be very independent and accessible to only those who need it. Now, the data can be shared between, but what you'll see in the future, this drawing will change a little bit where SCADA is outside of corporate and even broadband. We want to narrow the scope of where broadband touches our corporate. Yeah, our corporate network has to be secure. You know, that's our billing information. All of that kind of stuff. So the how things will work in the future is those will be separated as much as possible.
And they are separate networks currently, but they have overlapping.
So I guess a quick question on this slide then while it's up there is, since we're going to be operating and maintaining the county sewer system, I mean, we're getting more and more arms to the octopus here that, you know, we can have stuff coming back to us from. Obviously, I would expect that to be corporate, even though we'll probably have telemetry or SCADA and things like that involved with that. Same with our well houses and other places, which are critical, you know, infrastructure. So I'm just kind of curious as to how encompassing is this beyond just the PUD? How much does this affect us in our relationship with the port, the city, the county, whoever? So
The broadband division will be instrumental in bringing back information, for example, from the port. As you know, we're entering into an agreement with the port where we're going to share IT resources. So a lot of information will be transported through broadband. It won't. Some of it will hit corporate, some of it won't. The plant have a SCADA component in the new sewer plant that will come back to our SCADA, but some will come into corporate also. So everything we do is going to change as we add and expand all of these.
So my follow-up question to that, or that was the setup, this is the question, is how much outreach are we doing? How much connectivity, or not connectivity, how much coordination or continuity are we involved with right now with those other entities on what we're doing with this, as opposed to what they may already have in place, or are they designing? I mean, what kind of continuity do we have so that we're not working at cross purposes or separate types of interfacing and things like that?
Weeks into this, and so interface with others is not there. But if you go back a couple slides, there were slides where we have to have vendors, contractors. You could put in there government agencies that we deal with all the time, or that we're.
So what I'm trying to put it on your radar is we should be communicating with them if we're not at that level, not just the day-to-day operations, but you know, a policy change for us or a new policy. And if they're looking at that, we should make sure there's coordination there before we get too far down the rabbit hole. So that's my 2 cents on it.
As we know and develop more, that will be instrumental. It will be.
Yeah, we'll add a partner slide to this separate from the vendor and contractor, because it'd be similar. Or vendor or partners box, not a whole slide. So, okay, and then this is just the last slide, is just the different roles that IT has to fill, and that we're going to be having to shore up and possibly reassign folks to specify in some of these areas. The network, which is the routing and the switching. We do this both for we do this for all 3 of those separate networks. Systems, servers, applications, security, firewalls, intrusion, data. That's mostly dealing with our software and database systems, the hardware, just the day-to-day IT, and then the outside plant. So that's all we've got for the presentation.
So
Oh, no, I have a timeline, sorry. So right now we're hoping for a review and approval of the plan. We're going to start working on policies and putting together some additional staffing and software plans. We expect to bring the policies to the board as first drafts in March. And then I think we're looking for approval. Yes, policy. I think we'll be looking back for approval in April. Yeah, I can't see that.
So again, I applaud this move forward. It's kind of long overdue, and I know we've had a lot of irons in the fire and staff shortages maybe and other issues going on. I meet with the GM tomorrow. I'll discuss things further about what the commissioners received. I had difficulty with what we had to review.
Without an explanation, it meant nothing.
Well, even without that, it was still a struggle. So again, that's for tomorrow. I wish that we would have been a little more engaged, we being the commissioners, that we would have been a little more aware of this. I realize we're doing this kind of in a way as a component to get a grant. It's like, I would have hoped that that would not have been the impetus for why we're doing this. It would have happened a long time ago. So again, I know we're throwing a lot out there, quick and dirty spaghetti on the wall, blah, blah, blah. But I'm glad that we're looking at this, sounds like, to go take it seriously and get it right. So again, the takeaway for me is moving forward, interaction with the board of what you're going to do before you start to do it, not when you're done or halfway through. I would appreciate knowing what we're working on, and somewhat of an update is, on 30,000 feet as to here's the progress or here's the turn we took, moving forward with this particular process on these supply chain, IT policies and all these things, because I know there's a lot of moving parts and I know it takes staff time. I'm not asking for a 10-page report, but I do think that we do need to have a heads up, because this is something I believe the board should be involved with. Board input should be part of this process.
So next Tuesday, Energy Northwest was gonna come in and do a grant presentation. They can't make it now. So at that time frame from 3 to 4 or 3 to 3:55, so we have a small break, you will get a cybersecurity update where we're starting to talk about this. We're going to review some of the things that can only be done in executive session based on our network, both successes and vulnerabilities. So that will start and will be pushed heavily for the next several months.
So in spite of what this timeline says, there's nothing that we are going to approve today.
We need a motion to approve the plan as presented today. We do need that motion for the,
And that is
This was for discussion only.
we need, to my
it's a
knowledge.
component of the grant, the way I understood the information we received.
Oh, I'm sorry that I included this last week's agenda report and I did not revise it. On the agenda, it does say we approve a motion. My apologies. Too many documents to put together.
Yeah, the agenda I have under 4.5 says recommended action is approve a motion adopting the cybersecurity plan, which we've seen that can't be presented in public. And like I said, I know as one commissioner, I struggled with interpreting what I saw, but I get it. And I'm being graceful here and saying, okay, this is a good start.
I know, and I've been involved in a lot of this SCADA, cybersecurity, the NERC stuff. A lot of it I had to have explained to me. Especially the way it was filled out. And I talked to Joel about this, so.
Well, your 3-hour meeting with me is a 4-hour meeting tomorrow, so.
I already told you. Okay, well.
Anyhow, any further questions about this process at this point? Because we cannot talk about, quote unquote, the plan document. That at this point, if I'm understanding correctly, only staff and the board has been able to view per legal advice.
Correct.
Okay. Just so the public knows that there's sensitive material and information there that obviously that's why you need cybersecurity and other risk management policies. So
I move that the Board of Commissioners approve cybersecurity plan.
I'll second the motion.
So motion's been made and seconded to approve the cybersecurity plan has been presented to the board. Any further discussions on the issue? Not seeing any hands. Nothing on the phones, nothing in the room. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion is approved to accept the cybersecurity plan that has been presented to the board. And I don't see any other business on the agenda. Are there any other items for the good of the order? I know we got a DocuSign coming our way, and there was one other thing earlier on that Commissioner Collins should be looking to sign, another document.
Yeah, we'll have the document signed sent out as soon as I get back to the office. So please sign them this afternoon.
And the MOU, obviously, that's between the general manager and HCC. So is there anything else grant related, since tomorrow is your deadline, that we should be aware of so that We don't-
I pray that there is not.
that we don't have another hand grenade roll into your office.
That's what my office is for.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that. All right, all that being said, I will adjourn. It is 11:34. I'm going to adjourn this meeting of the Jefferson PUD.
Get feeling better, Jeff.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, folks.